I don't know. Really? Is that not how it works?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to IGN Game Scoop. I'm your host, Damon Hatfield. I'm joined this week by Greg Miller.
Penguins are majestic.
Justin Davis.
Scoop.
And very special guest, video game developer Anthony Gallegos.
Hello, everyone.
Is joining us here.
You're back.
I'm back.
You've been gone a long time.
It feels a lot longer than it's been.
It does.
It hasn't even been a year.
Really?
I'm saying it feels a lot longer.
When did you leave?
I left.
It was like
in
May
of last year.
Oh,
Wow.
So it hasn't even been a year, but it feels much longer than that.
Anthony
It's been a dark time for all of us.
left IGN to go make video games. He made a game called Daylight, all on his own, all by himself.
Well, with an awesome team. Oh, you even got B-roll. That's awesome.
Yep.
Zagaransky is king of the B-roll.
It'll be
you
out.
say anything, he'll have B-roll for
It'll
it.
be out in April, so I'm really excited.
Is it coming out for my birthday?
For people to try it
Because my
out.
birthday's in April.
People to try it out. I don't want to say an exact date.
Okay, well then.
But you should be able to play it on your birthday.
Yeah, my
Mostly
birthday's-
because I'm really bad at keeping track of dates. I actually don't even know my own parents' birth dates.
Terrible.
I always have to be reminded, so I know I'm bad.
Anyway, viewers, we have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about Assassin's Creed 5. We're going to talk about it has a code name. You know.
Right.
We're talking about the biggest franchises of video games. But first, Sony finally unveiled this week its long-rumored virtual reality headset, codenamed Project Morpheus. Greg,
Yeah.
you've used it.
The next generation sat on my face.
Whoa.
Tell us about it. Tell us about it.
It's a lot like Oculus Rift. I think it's a sleeker design than Oculus Rift.
Just like the hardware of it?
Right, when you look at the B-roll here of Scott Lowe wearing it, I think that looks better personally than the Oculus
Well, that's
does
just
at this
because
moment.
Scott Lowe is a very good looking.
That is also true. But my thing mainly is, for me with Oculus Rift, I always feel like the lenses are directly on top of my eyes.
I don't like that. I don't like that
It's
PlayStation
interesting
Move.
that they combine it with PlayStation Move.
No, that's
Well,
a great idea.
Yeah, not a fan.
But is the headset isn't intended to work with PlayStation? Like, not a PC.
PlayStation 4, yes,
Yeah.
it's intended to work with PlayStation 4.
So that's interesting, because at this point, Oculus has been PC only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we asked them, if they want to bring it to console someday, and they were like, well, yeah, sure, maybe
They were
someday.
actually-
We want to get it out the door first.
Yeah.
They were pretty dismissive, actually. In November,
consoles?
they gave an interview and just said no, they didn't have any. They didn't think the consoles would be powerful enough, and since it's a static piece of hardware and PCs are always evolving, and situations can change super quickly. They could have like one positive meeting, but yeah, Oculus was not super interested in the console business.
Well, I wonder if this means for sure now Oculus will never come to PS4.
Yeah,
I mean, Sony has
why
their
would
own.
Sony
Yeah.
let them?
Yeah.
The big thing you're talking about, that you're put off by the PlayStation
PlayStation
Move.
Yeah. I thought we were done with that forever.
Well,
But it's such a great
Every-
use for it.
Here's the thing. Remember, let's two pins in things. I'm pulling the first one out. Remember that you have PlayStation Move in your house right now. Your DualShock 4 has a light bar. You have a PlayStation Move device.
Okay.
In the demos I was using it for, I was using a DualShock 4, and that was acting like a PlayStation Move in the way of I did one called The Deep, where I'm in a shark tank and I get submerged in water. And
Like
first
that
off,
show with Mark Cuban.
No. I wasn't pitching products and hoping that they invest.
Got it.
I was actually in a Shark Tank going underwater.
Oh.
And in that point, the
That makes
camera
way more sense.
is tracking the lights on Morpheus, the ones that you see in the front of it and the ones in the back of it, giving you 360 degrees.
I was
so
wondering why there was-
you can completely turn, and the camera then sees this in the back, so you can do a full 360, which I'm
Right.
pretty sure you can't do on Oculus.
No,
correct?
you can't. That sounds so rad. I haven't used the Morpheus yet. But the general feedback, like Scott's feedback and what I've heard from other people, is this is A, a lot better than they expected it to be, but B, the Oculus is still like a little bit better. That's the general consensus. But one way that the Morpheus is better is since it has those lights on the back, you can turn around and the system will recognize that you've done that.
That was cool to be able to. I was in the Shark Tank and look all the
It's
way
awesome.
around. The shark, and they like this in particular. The shark comes up and like bites something off and swims around you, and so you're trying to keep track of it. But then with the DualShock in my hand, I was holding it just. Actually, that might be me doing it. No, I'm doing like where I'm holding it like a PlayStation Move wand, just because that felt natural. Because in the demo, you have a flare gun in one hand, and that's it. So like I wasn't when I'm moving around in 360 degrees going, oh my sharks and fish. Like it made more sense just to hold it because I was holding the flare gun. So I think a PlayStation Move there wouldn't feel that weird. Also, I already have it. At
Is
home.
it using a PlayStation Eye?
It's using the PlayStation
camera?
4 camera. Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, because the problem with that, then, hopefully by the time they would distribute this, those would be like readily available.
Right now, there's a lot of reports. Kids have been tweeting me saying they are in stores again, that they are ramped up and stuff.
Does it require the camera?
I believe, yeah, of course.
I mean, 'cause it's
That's
tracking all the
it has
lights.
to track the lights on the
that's
thing.
how
Yeah.
it's- okay.
I think
not like a
it's a
controller.
great use of the Move. I mean, as a normal gaming device, it's like a competitor to the Wii. The Move's so-so.
Yeah.
But I mean, the problem with VR headsets is the more realistic they get, you end up with this weirdness where you look down and expect to see your hands.
Right.
But your hands are holding a controller, so there's this weird disconnect. Like, it can never feel that real.
Okay. So if your character was like holding a sword.
Yeah,
Right.
it's awesome.
Well, here's the interesting thing: is we actually after we
Point-
did all
point
these
noted.
after we did all these demos, we went and had an interview with Dr. Richard Marks, who made PlayStation Move and is working on Morpheus, and Shuhei Yoshida, and they talked about a lot of stuff that we're talking about. And like we asked them, like Move wasn't super well received. You know what I mean? It wasn't a colossal hit.
And they said, what?
They immediately said, well, actually, it did better than IGN likes to paint the picture. But yeah, it was Shuhei always gives you back the jabs. But Richard was talking, and he's talking about the fact that it doesn't work in experiences. It didn't take off the way they thought it was because you're watching a 2D screen and then trying to control something in 3 dimensions. But right now it fits so well, and that's what I'm saying is I didn't even think about it when I was in there. The fact that I was using this and seeing my hand in the game move the exact same way as it was here.
Like that's why that's one of the big problems that I have with Oculus right now is that you have this incredible experience like in your face, but you're still just holding a game controller.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
and that they got to fix that.
I will say that as I've played like the game that I've worked on with Oculus.
Would that be
supports Oculus.
Daylight?
Yeah,
Coming
but
out this April?
It supports Oculus and as I was playing the demo, it is a little bit of a disconnect at times.
Yeah.
Just because you are playing it. Like I still think it's really enjoyable. Not just because it's my game. I think Oculus is rad. Like I've played.
Sure.
Oculus.
Yeah, I think Oculus. Is awesome.
But when you're using it, there is that bit where you're like, my fingers are still controlling my like gun in my hands on a mouse and a keyboard,
Yeah.
and then my head is moving independently of that. And there is that's never moving. Those are stationary. So I could see that because your hands are moving with the mask at the same time. Everything's moving, so you're much more
You always do.
immersed.
Whenever we mimic this, we're always going,
I know.
Well, because all the
sure.
B-roll footage you see, and the first thing everyone does when they put it up, they're like, I can really just look straight up.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so they tilt their head back. Right.
Well, yeah, because you got to test it. I mean, for like a gladiator game, right? That was the thing in Sports Champions everybody thought was really cool. If you could have one move and one shield, and they were like moving actually 1-to-1, and you're in this 3D thing, and you're turning around.
I mean, that's what
I
we
wanna
all
play-
wanted, even with like
Skyward Sword.
No, I was going to say even as far back as like the release game. What was the game where you had a gun and a sword? There was sword fighting. It was an Ubisoft game. Red Steel. Everyone wanted that in Red Steel. We thought we were going to be like gun battle.
Yeah, yeah.
So we've wanted that.
what was the game you were just talking about, the Punch-Out style game?
Rage of the Gladiator?
Yeah.
That sort of game.
Great.
So your first impression was positive?
Yeah. I mean, it's
Maybe-
PlayStation has, I think, learned a lot of lessons in terms of what's worked and what doesn't. And they were very frank in the conversation we had with them that this won't be tacked on to existing games. The experiences need to be built from the ground up, blah, 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 or they're not going to work. And they mentioned they have a Thief demo running there as well that the Thief guys put together, where it's you put on the Project Morpheus and then you're in the Thief world around doing it. And that makes sense, but then that also kind of brings up the whole thing to me of just like, when they used to tack PlayStation Move levels onto games too. And you're just like, well, I never even care.
Also a strange choice to showcase. Like Thief wasn't incredibly well received, right?
Sure, but I think about,
It's
they're
immersive in first
you're a
person.
first-person PlayStation 4 game that it's easy, somewhat easy, right, to take your
Yeah.
already existing world and tack it on.
Yeah, I guess so.
The real cool thing we keep talking about is the fact that they had gaze vision, like the way you look. Not like trying to track a homosexual, but
Yeah, I was
like
gonna-
it followed your
I was
gaze.
going to make the same joke.
It's a joke. Everybody calm down. But they had a gaze tracker on, and they showed it with Infamous. And basically what it was is you'd be playing the game, but instead of having to ever control the other analog stick to control the camera or move it around, it tracked your eyeballs. And wherever your eyes went, the camera would turn and center to that.
Yeah,
And so when you were trying to shoot stuff, you would just look at that thing and hit the shoot button.
It's interesting that Sony's so forward thinking like that. Like eye tracking has been not common, but it's been a thing on PCs for like a while. Like people experiment with it and there's startups and this and that. But it seems like one of those things that's really off limits for consoles. But now they're willing to be more experimental, and consoles don't need to just be the static thing forever. Like they are willing to sort of test out new stuff.
I mean, they imagine at this point though, there's no talk of price.
Oh God, no, there's still.
I'm just curious,
Yeah.
ultimately, because to me that's the biggest hurdle is like
Sure.
approachability as far as like, because you have to get a big enough install base to make it worth
That's
people's
the
time
thing,
to develop
right?
for
Like,
it.
how many developers are going to spend time making games for it unless there's a big install base?
Yeah.
So it's going to be, Oculus is like $450 for the dev kit too.
I think
something
they're
like that.
$350.
I mean,
So they're hundreds of dollars.
Yes.
So like say this is an extra $100 you have to buy the PlayStation camera as well, right?
Yeah.
I know it's just a big investment. How many PS4 owners are going to be jumping into VR to Project Morpheus?
I guess depending on how Sony wants to treat it, they could potentially, like, maybe even make it a requirement. Like, you want to put a game on PS4, it needs to support Morpheus. Like I'm
Then
really
every
nice.
game,
I'm saying,
every
like-
game will be VR.
I know.
Well, I'm saying, but every game could support it. It's just like it has to have the option for it. Like on PlayStation systems, like every game has to support remote play. That's that's
Sure.
just a standard of PS4 games.
I mean, I guess the
So-
thing is, though, it makes the most sense for first-person games. Like we were
That's right.
brainstorming, Gran Turismo.
Yeah,
Is an obvious
That's what I
one.
wonder is
Like,
what would be the killer app that would really sell PS4 owners
I feel like that.
Project Morpheus.
I mean, the same thing that we've seen with, the one that always impresses people the most that I've seen is that Eve Valkyrie game for Oculus, and it's like
they're running it on Morpheus as well.
That's what I'm saying. So that one, a first-person cockpit game where now you're moving in one direction and then independently looking around to like check your six. It's like
some stuff. The weird thing about VR is it'll never become the standard. It'll never be like the way video games are played because so many are not first-person. Like it's always just gonna have to be like an option. Like that's what is a little bit strange to me. Like it'll always sort of feel like a novelty in that sense, I guess. I don't know. Like if you're not in a character's head when you're playing, when you're moving around in a VR environment, like I guess maybe I could. Like maybe if I saw an example, then I would get it. But as of now, I can't really picture it.
I mean, I think that I did at least see one Oculus demo that was not a first-person game, and it was like you were supposed to be an old person sitting on a couch controlling like puppets that were battling or something like that. And so you were still like sitting on I guess technically like the perspective was first person, but the fighting was taking place in a third person thing.
There's also that Oculus demo where you're watching the movie in the theater. That makes more sense for like when you're on a plane or something, right? You're not like, why would you do that at home?
What? Don't judge me.
I'm going to the movies.
Yeah, my friend will text me, hey, you want to come out tonight? Sorry, got a date at the movies.
Eating your popcorn. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, like when I think of like PlayStation franchises that they could use as a killer app for this, I don't know. I thought Gran Turismo, MotorStorm, Killzone, Resistance. I don't know what it would be.
It needs something new.
It's something just new, like you were saying.
I think my favorite stuff that I see on the Oculus right now is the stuff that's kind of off the wall. I really like the roller coaster demo. Like that's not a video game, but you're first person riding a roller coaster. You're riding, you reach the peak and kind of look all around at the horizon, and then it falls, and like that's awesome. Like I think there's a new category of like there's potential for there to be a new category of like interactive entertainment where it's like just walk around a city, like the Citadel. What's the demo the Unreal demo that Epic always shows off?
It was Epic
Citadel.
Yeah.
Like just walking around a town like that, and there's things for you to discover and explore, and I don't know, maybe there's like puzzles to solve or something like that, but it wouldn't even need to be like Skyrim.
Well, it's like Proteus, right? Like Proteus is like a thing that some people critique because like, what do? You just kind of wander around and make sounds and stuff, but with that sort of level of interactivity.
I think that's what I would like to see. Like I'd like to see like walk around Paris. Just keep with your headset on, and then it's passive and friendly, and there's not a big challenge for you to overcome.
Tour the Louvre. You'll never actually get to go, but now you can do a virtual tour.
For sure. That's what I think makes a lot of sense for VR.
So everyone's excited about Oculus. Sony seems to be serious about Project Morpheus. Does this mean does Xbox need a VR headset now too?
No.
Or the Xbox will now be like, maybe we should get Oculus working on our system.
Right.
So.
I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how much the excitement in our industry carries over to success in sales. Now, again, we were talking to them, like, Shu was very clear that, this is wave one, and they're treating this very much like they do most of their products, like they treat the PlayStation. This is PS1. They don't, there's going to be huge strides made, but it may be a decade, it may be 2 decades. And when he was saying that, it was interesting to think of Move in the same light. That Move came out and was like, a fart in the wind. Nobody cared about it, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, it's part of this thing that people are excited about again, and it's in your controller already, and it's like, oh, like, they're iterating it on. It's not the stupid dildo with a light of a ball on the end of it anymore, but it is being iterated on. It is still part of their plan. They are still doing things with it. So I don't know.
Like, Move didn't go away. It's in every PS4 right now.
And, we were talking about, like, what killer app would be great for this? Well, Uncharted didn't move Vitas. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it's that easy to crack this code. And it's also like, we have to have great experiences on it. It's like, well, Little Deviant sucked, and that didn't move a Vita. And it's weird.
I do think in that sense, the Oculus does have an advantage being on a PC, a platform that's wide open like that. They're just going to slowly and steadily sell, 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, or however many. And then eventually they'll have this big number of Oculuses in shelves over the course of years, whereas Sony, the console market's different, and they really will need to, like, come out of the gate and, like, have software and hardware, and then have this like explosion of momentum if they want it to work. Console accessories are so tricky. You know what I mean? Like so many super scopes come and go, and it's just like that never worked and did anything. Like Microsoft did the right thing with Kinect, right? Like here's Kinect, and then on their next console, it's like motherfucker, here's Kinect. It's in every gosh darn box.
When like something like Wii Fit even like blows up, like even when I saw one of those, I was like, not a chance. But that was a very profitable thing for them. Yeah. But you can see that it also goes the other way with something like the U-Draw tablet. They can completely break the back of the
maybe
company.
there will be. Maybe there'll be like one, like the Wii Fit balance board was, they sold tens of millions of them because of Wii Fit. And then there were some other games that took advantage of it, but it was really that one experience. So could there be like one VR experience that's like so like that sells the headset? Like it's a
I mean,
package?
it's possible. I always come back to the nerdy stuff we always talk about. Personally, I want a Superman game where I can fly around the city. But then we get into the limits of how big the city are. What does everybody love of Spider-Man games? Web slinging when it's done right. If you did first-person web slinging with 2 moves or 2 controllers, where you're doing that might work. I'm spitballing here.
I feel like
what would get people excited about this?
I feel like the answer is not going to ultimately probably come from a team of 200 people. It's probably going to come from a company that like the guys that make Rust.
Finally, you're in the Greenbrier household.
I'm saying it's
PlayStation.
I'm saying it's going to be something really silly, and it's going to be something you didn't even expect to like. But then it's something that just like.
Or they'll pay Mojang $100 million for Minecraft 2, exclusive to Project Morpheus.
I think. Well, yeah, they would never do that. They could get Minecraft working on Oculus for sure. That could be.
I think it already does, doesn't it?
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
No, I think it's already.
Now, one of our viewers, he goes by the name of Xavier.
Professor X.
Yeah, he has a theory that he'd like to share with us. He says, "I was wondering what you think about my theory. I think Valve will release Half-Life 3 completely optimized for virtual reality headsets. Here are the reasons. Valve has been waiting for real innovation in gaming. Atman Binstock used to work at Valve and now works for Oculus. Half-Life has always been a game with a very strong emphasis on the first-person experience, and it is the only way that comes to mind how Half-Life 3 could possibly deliver on its expectations. I would love to hear your opinions on this topic."
I don't feel like, just personally, I don't know that I feel like Valve will be the ones that necessarily do it. I feel like Valve is a company that they understand that like new technology is awesome. But for instance, there was a controller called a Novant Falcon. I remember there was like this really cool first-person controller. But Valve didn't go out to support the Novant Falcon, but they encouraged, if my memory is right, they let this company do it. They're like, yeah, make Novant Falcon worth working with our game. So I think that it could release with it, but I'd be very surprised if Valve were the ones that like did that themselves. Valve, if anything, is going to be like, we're more focused on getting Half-Life 3 to a state where we'll work on any Steam box so that you can play it with our controller.
That's what jumps out at me too. Is like on paper, like all of those bullet points. I'm like, yeah, that all makes sense. Except like the key point that's missing is like, what's in it for Valve? Why would they do that? Yeah. That helps Oculus so much more than it helps Valve.
Yeah, if Gabe Newell was an investor in Oculus, and you're like, okay, so there's like something there, but they're not making their own headset, and no one at Valve, to my knowledge, is like in the board for Oculus. So
like that's what if they had their own Oculus Rift competitor that they were trying to get people to use, then suddenly that makes a tremendous amount of sense to release an exclusive piece of software for it.
Everything that I've seen with Oculus is pretty slow-paced, too. Like, is it ready to handle like a frantic first-person shooter yet?
No.
The question is, are we ready to handle it?
Yeah.
That's the other thing. You put it on, you're getting these 5-minute demos that are easing you into it. Even in the 360-degree Shark Tank one, like, I whipped my head around at one point. I was like, "Whoa! I was not prepared for that." And that's just like the fact that you're not used to it.
There's a lot of motion blur.
Yeah,
right now.
I definitely think that games that are made for it will have to take advantage of they'll have to be I would not be surprised at all that if you ever play a game that works on a normal monitor and then also on a virtual thing and it's first person, it's fast like a Call of Duty. There would probably be a setting that says, "Are you playing with a VR headset?" Oh, you are, and it'll do things like reduce head bob and stuff like that. They'll have to do stuff like that to help tune that down so that they can reduce motion sickness. Because like you were saying, that roller coaster thing, I've used that before and I thought it was great, but by the end of it, I was like, whoa.
Sure.
It was a little disorienting.
All right. The Game Developers Conference is going on right now. It's always a good time to get some juicy, possibly salacious comments from people in the industry.
Of course.
The first GDC I ever worked, I was at a talk, one of the developers on SimCity said out loud to a room full of people, "The Wii is a piece of shit." He described it as 2 GameCubes tied together with duct tape.
That was that infamous quote.
And I was like, excuse me, I need to go to the press room. Our own Colin Moriarty wrote an article this week. He was at a talk, the narrative lead at Riot Games, makers of League of Legends, and the design lead at Microsoft Game Studios, who were giving a talk on why plot is highly overrated in games. And that players typically do not remember the stories that they experience in games. The thrust of their argument is that developers spend too much time focusing on the third act of their game when most people will never experience it.
That's
Well, it's the
Sadly
survey
true.
results, right? Like
Sure.
that people surveyed could recall. You say, "Hey, what was this movie about?" And they could tell you that recall the whole plot. Hey, what was this TV show about? And they could recall the whole plot. But then in games, hey, what was the plot of this game? And people couldn't tell you in any detail what the plot was.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think, Anthony? After spending a year on the game development side of things, what's your reaction to that?
I would say I'll be very happy if a lot of people I like that were to tell me that they finished, because I've like talking to people that I've worked with at the studio and stuff too. They tell me that it's very often that people don't usually play like more than like the first hour of something, whether like they like it or not. It doesn't even matter sometimes. It's just like they start trying, they play it for a while, and then they have to move on to something else, and they just never have a chance to come back. I mean, I think it's even indicative of like something like Diablo, which is like obviously a hugely popular game, right? And it's like Blizzard has said publicly that a lot of people never even beat the game on normal. Mm-hmm. It's like that's not even that long of a game. You can get there pretty fast on normal, and it's
And
like
do you have the stats on the completion of games? So there's a survey, and part of it was the recall of plot. No one remembered that, but then another survey question was people that they pulled Steam stats on Steam who finished games.
Yeah. So yeah, we have some stats here. I think the stats are a little strange, but we could just go through it here. First of all, I was really surprised to find that only 66% of people finished Walking Dead Season 1, Episode 1. Because that's like...
that's like an hour.
Yeah, that's like 2 hours of a game, and only 66% finished it. On the higher end of things is stuff like Mass Effect 2 and Bioshock Infinite, where people love those stories, but that's still just over 50%, like half the players. Yep. On the low end, like Borderlands 2, Skyrim, Mass Effect 3, these games were just not finished.
Yep.
Now, one thing I think is strange is that these are coming from Steam, and Steam is kind of a different beast from consoles, right? Like you talk about, you have however many hundreds of games on Steam that you never even get to,
now.
right? It's different. Like if you just have a PS4,
I would question.
I feel like you're much more likely to finish that one game that you bought this month.
My one caveat with those stats would be: are those people that started the game, or are those people that own the game? Because I have 500 Steam games, and 300 of them I've never booted up. But if it's people that started the game and didn't finish, then then I would consider that pretty legit.
I would be really curious to find out too, like how many people will like if it was like I'd be curious to know why they didn't finish them. I guess too, like especially something like The Walking Dead, whether it was like they bought it, wasn't all what they expected, and they moved on, or something like that. Like
maybe they can connect with characters.
And why like I'd also be curious to know like something like Mass Effect 2 and 3, right, where the completion rate was much higher. For me, like even when I think back on it, I don't tend to remember the overarching story of the game as much as I remember little vignettes that were almost like episodes of a
what
TV
happens
show.
with Jacob's mission?
Yes,
what happens
exactly.
with Jack's
It's because that
mission?
whole game is just vignettes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't like Mass Effect 2
But I'm
much.
just saying, like the best parts are the little chunks that are like that, like the mini episodes and those little tiny stories. The sort of macro story is like, I've never been that.
Well, that's what they were talking
those.
about in the speech, right? About the fact that like people connect with characters, but not so much just plot.
They connect with characters, yeah.
And so that like when you're talking about a game that is 10 hours long, I think it's easier to remember the plot of a 2-hour movie. You're sitting there and watching it, and it's all you're focused on.
That's what I think they
A video
overlook
game,
that.
you run into a wall over and over, trying to get past this boss, this enemy, this room. You finally do. You move on. That room you remember, and you remember this cutscene you liked a lot. But we're talking about it on Beyond. The fact that when the story came up, it goes back to I think when. I argue with people about why I like Uncharted 3 better than Uncharted 2, and people come up with all the time, well, what the hell was Marlowe's, what was she going to do with that thing that drove people crazy? And I'm like, what does it even fucking matter? Like, I love Nate and Sully's relationship and what they were doing in the gameplay, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm not hung up on that. But in a movie, it would be, how many times you sit around a movie and talk about how much...
Like, if we were watching Uncharted as a movie, like the first Uncharted, right? You'd be like, this is really cliched and stupid and stuff like that. But, like, at the same time, the dynamic between those two characters is so funny and, like, good and, like, charming that it's just, like, in a game experience, it just works, like, differently than it does. But,
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Telling a story in a game is hard. Like, if you were writing an Uncharted movie, you wouldn't write a line that was, and then you watch Nate try to get out of a burning building for 10 minutes and he couldn't figure out where to go.
well, that's the thing. Maybe that's why something like Gone Home works as well as it does, because all they went with is the story. It's a game that... I mean, not that there are obviously video game elements to it. Like, you aren't going to be able to progress through this until you do this and that, right? There's very gamey parts to it, but the game is the story. I mean, so all they do is the story, just like a film does. It is just a story.
Movies are so, like, every single, like, they'll shave seconds in the editing room to make you feel a specific way, and camera angles perfectly tuned to, make you feel tense or make you laugh, like the timing of jokes. And in games, the player's in control. The people that made the game isn't in control. So it's a challenge. Like, you kind of like you can have really effective voice acting. You can tell a story through your environment. Like Irrational is always so good at that.
Yeah.
But it's not the same. Like I think in many ways, in terms of purely communicating a story, like just a point A to point B story, I feel like in a lot of ways it's an inferior medium to like movies where you have complete control over every element of it.
Yeah, and I think like obviously this is IGN's a place that loves Gone Home. I love Gone Home, but it's like I think one of the things that Gone Home does that's very good is as far as like being able to tell story is that there's no like direct fail condition.
Right. Sure.
And so therefore
You can't lose.
you're never thinking about the fact like if I mess this up, this choice, or if I don't find this thing in 5 minutes, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
So it's like you were saying, right? Movies can craft experience where they know like right now we want you to feel sad. Gone Home can do that too because they know that like Uncharted may be trying to do that. They'd be like, man, we really want the player to feel betrayed right now. But for all they know, you're dealing with the fact that you want to break your controller because the last encounter was just awful to you.
It's hard. It's distracting. Like the gameplay, gameplay is everything in a video game, but it does distract from the story. Like while you're maybe supposed to be thinking about one thing, you're getting shot from this direction, and so your attention is diverted over here. Like it's just tough. Like
There's always has to be. I mean, you look at Metal Gear and what a train wreck.
Metal
the
Gear.
story is, from 1 to 4, and how they have to do it because they want to give you this game that has beautiful bosses and different levels, and this is happening, and how you fight all these different guys. So nobody's fleshed out correctly, and then you got the lale.
yeah. I do like that lack of a failure state is I loved Beyond Two Souls, and I don't feel like anybody else at IGN did.
I liked it.
It was one of my favorite games of last year, and it never even crossed my mind. I got through the whole game before someone's like, yeah, there's no game over. You can't lose. And I'm like, oh. I never even thought about it. I was just so invested in the moment to moment, her story and what was happening on screen that it didn't even cross my mind that there's no game over.
And that's another game though that to me is like the overall story is like fine, it's whatever. But again, little tiny vignette moments are like what makes it so special. Like I remember particular scenes more than the overall game that were like really impactful with me.
So just looking at the quote, plot is highly overrated in games, I'm tempted to agree with that, actually. I don't, if a game tells me a great story, I appreciate that. I think it's great. I was moved by the end of Half-Life 2, Episode 2.
Oh, yeah.
But when I sit down to play a video game, I'm not thinking, I'm sitting down to get a good story. I'm sitting down to have fun playing a game.
The story's an excuse to take you from set piece to set piece.
I mean, for instance, Titanfall, right? Titanfall has a campaign, and it's like they insert story things over the multiplayer gameplay and stuff, but I play it and I don't care about any of that because all I care about is that I'm having a fun dropping gigantic awesome robots on things and shooting things.
But for the
with my
most
friends.
part, doesn't it come down to what you want in that moment, and that's what video games get to offer because they're so diverse? I always say that I'm a story whore. I love story in my games, and I'm one of the people who love plot and Infamous Second Son's up now, and one of the things in there is the story's not great, and some kid came at me on Twitter, even though I didn't review it, is like, this is the problem with critics. You all care so much about story, and none of us do. And I'm like, well, we say the gameplay's fun, but I do want a great story in this kind of game. Whereas a movie or a book, it's all about. I mean, I guess there's idiots like Alex Solomita are like, man, Transformers, there was this awesome explosion, I got a beard. But for the most part, you go to a movie expecting a good story, so clearly you're more invested in the plot there.
Also, that kid shouldn't speak for everyone. There are plenty of people that I see on comments all the time that are like, a story is what matter to me more than anything.
Right.
I think the devil's advocate argument would be, the question is it which comes first? Do people not recall stories because the stories just aren't that great? If you're a really, really talented story maker, maybe you're writing a book or maybe you're writing screenplays and not writing games.
Yeah.
And that's totally unfair to all the people that are writing stories and games. But it does beg the question, right? A lot of game stories are just Space Marine junk. It's an excuse for the gameplay, and it's an excuse to shoot the guns, and that's where the emphasis is.
Right. I mean, I think there's also a difference too. Is when a movie's made, a director has a vision, and they're often able to see it through, right? And they're not necessarily limited by a lot of technological things, depending on the type of movie they're making. Whereas in games, I know that so you'll sit down with the person that wrote this awesome story, and they'll be like, man, this is what I wrote, and you'll be like, you'll approach it, and you'll come to it, and you'll be like, that's going to be a 12-minute cutscene, which is going to cost a ton of money. We can't do that. Just no time. All right, so what if we just turn that into audio logs?
Right.
And then that's what ends up happening. So there was a cool story that might have made this game intensely emotional, but time and budget just cut it out, and so it became something that only 1/100th of the audience is going to get to see.
You're serving a lot more masters when you're making a game instead of just the story master. Master. But it's gameplay's first in most games, right? And so that just means by definition, the story's going to take a back seat.
Sure. Okay, it's that time of year. When,
Christmas?
Nope, not that time of year.
Oh.
Yet. That time of year when the new Assassin's Creed game tends to be announced.
That's true.
Oh yeah.
And before the announcement comes the leak.
All right.
Yes.
The leak is what we got this week. Kotaku had images of 2 games, one codenamed Unity, one codenamed Comet. One meant for current gen consoles, one meant for last gen.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, Assassin's Creed is an annualized series at this point. We were fully expecting to get an Assassin's Creed this year, but what do you guys think about getting 2 different games, one for last-gen consoles?
So Ubisoft has a precedent of this. They did Splinter Cell Double Agent, was 2 completely different games on the Xbox and the Xbox 360, and that gen and the next gen.
Sure, of course that was...
But they were still called Double Agent.
Yeah, that's
years ago.
Yeah, but it was the last generation we had. I
Sure,
mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
Like other companies will do ports. Like you have Thief hitting both consoles, and a lot of EA stuff is Titanfall is hitting both consoles. Ubisoft is one of the only companies that will just do separate games straight up. They called it the same thing. Double Agent was a little bit of a special case, but this isn't completely unprecedented. They do have a history of not really half-assing it and doing 2 different games on both consoles.
Yeah, well, and not only that, but you've seen them do it whether it's like licensed games and stuff like that, like the PSP version of
Liberation.
this game is like totally different than, so I think that there is totally a chance that, they could both be good in their own right? They already have an engine that they know works on 360 and PS3, and they've been working on it for like several years now.
The weird thing will become, in the case of Double Agent, the older game was the better one, and the next gen one was inferior. And so then it was like, if you're a fan of that franchise, what do you do? Do you get the one with the fancy new graphics for your new console, or do you get the old one that really is probably the better game? So that could be weird with Assassin's Creed. I hope you don't get into a funky situation like that. Or a situation where you feel like you have to play both, if one leads into the other.
So, say they're both good. Will you play both of them?
That's the best case scenario for Ubisoft. Probably what they're hedging their bets on too. They're like, we can sell 2 games this year.
Yeah, if they're different. They're both good and they're both different.
Yeah.
It's not too much Assassin's Creed.
What if they sell complementary stories? We're kind of in uncharted waters.
Yeah.
You
They should
figure
call
they
it
have the fan base, right? I have a friend back home who owns a PS3 and only plays Assassin's Creed on it pretty much. Every year he goes out and buys those games. So if to double down on that and maybe push him to buy a next-gen system, which is good for them, great. For me personally, I'll probably just play one and only for a little bit. I love Assassin's Creed 4. I love that game, and I am not even close to
Open world games are a hard thing for me to finish nowadays.
Right. Yeah,
I actually am one of those people that, as we look at the people that don't finish games. I started Black Flag and I was super into it.
Yeah.
Played 8 hours and then I was like, something else happened.
Yeah, exactly. It was one of those things. I played it I played all these little bits during Christmas break, and then I got a weekend to play it. And I was like, oh man, I'm clearing every island. I'm doing so well. And I zoomed out and I'm like, there are a lot of islands. I got to play something else on break. And then I played DC Universe Online for another 40 hours.
I loved Black Flag.
I did
Yeah.
everything.
Oh, it's great.
I almost 100%ed it.
Yeah.
I eventually gave up, but I got close.
Yeah.
So the best case scenario here, or the worst case scenario here would be, that you need to buy both these games, that they each tell half a story, and Ubisoft's just trying to get $120 out of you.
Yeah.
But the best case scenario would be exactly like your friend that only has a PS3. They still want to deliver him an Assassin's Creed experience because there's 100 million last gen consoles out there.
They want him to deliver $60.
Right. But then they don't. So instead of just doing a port, they have it be the same game. They want it to be separate games, so the next gen version can just be ridiculous. They don't want it to be held back.
Yeah.
So that's really the best case scenario, in my opinion. Instead of making the same game on both versions, let's go absolutely balls to the wall with the next gen version and not be limited by the last gen.
It would be tough if you were trying to do it for both. I imagine there would be a lot of restrictions they would have to. With this last one, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that if they had made an Assassin's Creed strictly for PS4, they probably could have done higher actor counts,
100%,
and stuff like that.
Yeah, I play Black Flag on the PS4, and it looks great. But the other one looked great too. Yeah. It's clearly just an up-resed version of that.
Right.
So that's what I hope, if I'm being optimistic, that's what I hope their thought process was, hey, we can't ignore the last gen consoles yet, but we don't want the next gen version to be held back. Let's just do 2 separate games. And I hope it's not a $120 cash grab.
Well, Unity is apparently at least partially set in 18th century Paris.
That's the next gen one, right?
Yeah. What the current gen one?
Oh, yeah, excuse me.
Oh.
Yeah.
What do we think about that setting?
That sounds cool.
You like that?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, French Revolution's awesome, man. That's a great idea for this.
Lots of people be having their heads chopped off.
You also French bread.
I will un
Paris is a beautiful
Croque
city.
monsieur.
Yeah, I just felt like Black Flag was something really different for the series.
Sure.
It felt very
It
different.
will, in probably some ways, be a return
Yeah.
to that, right?
Je m'appelle Kenway.
All right, you guys are on board for a.
It's fair that it does return to that sort of Euro-centric.
Yeah, it
like
just
Black
feels
Flag
like
did have such a good
Assassin's Creed
vibe
2.
to it that it's a shame to abandon that. But
They'll be back. That's the thing. They keep going around, bouncing around to different things.
Yeah.
it's a great setting. I do assume that we would lose the sailing, which was awesome, and that's a little bit of a shame.
France
but
has a coast.
I don't know.
that's true.
Maybe one of them is more Black Flag because they were. I don't know. Ubisoft was distributing that poll asking people like, "Do you like the pirate mechanics in this game? Would you play another game that was solely about
There's
pirates?"
no way they could spin up a whole game like that in a year.
I don't know. If they just use all the same assets
Sure.
and just sort of like create new missions.
I mean, they already
in
have that
world.
ocean
Yeah.
like tech and stuff that they've done. So
That'd be badass. So maybe Black Flag 2 or another pirate game is the 360 PS3, and then they take the series to the French Revolution for next gen. That would make them feel really different.
Yeah.
If that comes to pass, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
Let's check in with the listeners.
Hey, listener.
Hey, listeners.
Listeners, remember you can always reach us at the email address gamescoop@ign.com.
Why does it make you so mad?
My thing.
Just like Michael Baker did. He says, quick question. Do you think one-off games are dead? It seems like everything is a franchise now. Even Ubisoft has told us Watch Dogs is basically a franchise, and the first game isn't even out yet. Even Slender got a sequel. He says SMH. What does that stand for?
Shaking my head.
Shaking my head. And I can't
So
keep
I
up.
don't think everything is necessarily a franchise. I do think that when a publisher invests $100 million in something, they want it to grow into a franchise, right?
You build this engine, you want to use it on
Yes,
something
they want
other
to see a
than this one
return
game.
on their investment. You know, whether it's like something like GTA, which we're seeing, right? That was made because and invested a huge amount of money because they wanted it to be a franchise, and now it is a franchise, and you will see it for as long as they continue to see a return on their investment.
Yeah,
It's
it seems pretty simple, right? Do you want to get $60 from a gamer one time, or do you want to get $60 from a game like every year, every couple years?
Sure.
It's
I
just
mean-
money. Like when you have a hit, you return to what works.
I don't think one-off games are dead. I just think they're. Yeah, we're always talking about this spectrum between independent and AAA, right? And I think one-off games are more likely to end
they're
up
like the $10 million games and stuff like that, and less. Like you're saying,
Yeah,
like
independent,
lower budget
right?
games.
Like I mean,
Yeah,
you
or
look
indie
at,
games even, right?
You look at like Drinkbox, right? And they did like Mutant Blobs Attack, and I mean there was another Blobs game too. Don't get me wrong, but then there's Guacamelee, and then maybe they move on to something else.
or like
and-
Clay, who does like Mark of the Ninja, and then
Right.
their new game
Right,
like
right,
Spy Party, Spy. I can't think of what it's called. Counter Spy, I forget.
Spy Me Once.
Spy versus Spy?
Either way, they're doing a spy game, but they also did Shank, which there was a sequel to Shank, granted, but
they
they
did Don't
tend to
Starve.
mix it up. Like, and they
Yeah,
did
yeah.
Don't Starve, which all these wildly different things. So
Yeah.
I don't think, I mean, obviously, like even them, I'm sure if they had a game that sold, 100, like 100 million, but like 20 million copies, they'd gladly make a second one if people would buy that. Like every studio would like to
Yeah.
have something that they know fans want more of.
Yeah, you want to find something fans want.
Coming up with a new idea and hoping that it does well is a very scary thing, especially for a smaller studio that's like, well, hopefully this doesn't break our bank.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's a lot easier to do on a smaller scale. Like the realities of AAA game development are that they're risk averse, and they have to be risk averse because these games have to hit aggressive sales
have
targets.
investors.
Yeah, so if you have something that hits, you have to return to it over and over again. You don't really have a choice. But that's not to say one thing that I like that Nintendo does. Miyamoto has a quote I might have talked about it on GameScoop before that I love, which is that he was responding to people accusing Nintendo of hitting Mario and Zelda over and over again. He's like, yeah, but that's just like the name on the box. The gameplay is totally different. Like, because it's Mario, it's guaranteed to sell, this is obviously very much paraphrasing. But he's
Obviously.
like, because it's Mario, it's guaranteed to be,
Miyamoto's like, look, bro.
Yeah.
This is how it is.
So like Mario Galaxy is it's basically a new franchise that happens to, you have Mario as your playable character and you have Goombas and you have that music. But otherwise it's a completely new thing.
Yeah.
And they do the same thing with Zelda. And that's what Call of Duty is an example of a game that's maybe doing it the wrong way of just a sequel every year. Whereas sure, Nintendo's been doing Mario for 30 years, but it reinvents itself.
Right.
So we just saw some B-roll of Mario Golf. Is that out?
No,
not
it's coming
yet.
out, and I'm really excited.
Okay.
It's gonna be great.
Well, because right now, I just saw that and I was like, I'm gonna get up and go to a GameStop right now.
I cannot wait. When is that coming out?
I think it's in May.
Oh my gosh.
Can we just?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, Mario Golf on like GBA was like my jam.
I know.
Great.
For me, it was GameCube. But yeah.
On GameCube as well, yes.
Yeah, we're getting that and Mario Kart. Like, they're both gonna be great.
I mean, I'm on board.
This is why games are franchises. Like,
I know, right? We're totally excited about it.
do you guys know what the 10 best-selling video game franchises of all time are?
Ghost House.
Yes. That's it. That's the 10 best.
Franchises.
Call of Duty.
Well, Call of Duty, yes.
You think Call of Duty's
I would
number
say
one?
Pokemon
No,
is
I don't
number
think Call
one.
of Duty is.
Yeah.
Mario.
I don't think Call of Duty is
Mario.
number one.
Mario
Pokemon.
count? Is Mario franchise? Does that count?
What do you think is number one?
It's not Call of Duty.
It's Mario.
Okay, it is Mario.
Mario is the number one.
Yeah.
Pokemon is number two.
Bah, 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 bah. Whoa.
Ba, ba, ba.
So, and then Call of Duty, I'm gonna say is in the top 5, but it's not.
You might be surprised what number 3 is. You'll never guess it. I'll have to tell you. The
XXX.
It's Wii, like the Wii
Oh, like
series of
Wii
games.
Fit, Wii Sports.
Wii Party.
Okay.
So Nintendo has the top 3 best-selling video game franchises of all time.
Sure.
Yeah. Number 4 is The Sims.
Oh yeah, that doesn't surprise me because those expansions always kill it, even if we don't think about it. But
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
5 is GTA.
oh,
6, I think is surprising, is Need for Speed.
That is surprising.
that is incredibly
It's hugely
surprising.
surprising, but they have made like literally 25 of
I mean,
them.
yeah, I think it's just there's a lot of them. to
Sure,
buy,
but I
to
mean
be
that's
sold.
you talk about a franchise that's been annualized and is still around. Like, man, more of those have probably come out than Call of Duties.
How did they know you were going to talk about this game?
This is Hot Pursuit, and I love.
Because my
Hot Pursuit was really
at his
good.
job,
Yeah.
everybody.
7 is Tetris.
Wow.
You know, I mean, a long-running
Yeah,
game
but-
that's been on every system.
Sure, but I feel like when was the last time I bought a Tetris game? It's been a long-
PS3. You didn't buy the PS3 version?
I
Oh
didn't.
my
That
god,
one
it
was
was so
good.
good.
Yeah.
Online multiplayer was dynamite.
Yeah.
They're bringing one to PS4. And
I don't care if it doesn't.
DS one was
I don't care if it doesn't
awesome,
support
too.
Morpheus though.
yes, it was.
DS was
they're crushing you. You're like, no! Their children are there. Their flocks are coming down, and you can disappear.
So 8 is Call of Duty, 9 is Final Fantasy, and number 10 is FIFA.
Oh, wow! I'm actually surprised
The
that FIFA
football.
wasn't, or like Madden. I'm surprised Madden isn't up in there.
FIFA's way
FIFA's
bigger.
a
got one
worldwide
part of the world.
phenomenon.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, Madden's just US.
Read my mind, bruh. Give me a pound. Bam! Show me Ransky's baby.
No.
One day you'll have it.
One more email this week. This is from Josh, a.k.a.
AKA Fraud Need.
Fraud Need.
Smiley emoticon. Josh Fraud Need smiley emoticon. He's really depressed.
It's like he needs a sad light like you have in Seattle.
Yeah, those are legit, by the way.
Sad lights?
Yeah, seasonal affective disorder. You know, like for people who don't get enough sunlight.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I
like
bought-
everyone here.
I bought one of those. Well, you guys have skylights and stuff. My office is very dark.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because artists like to keep it dark.
Sure,
I mean,
yeah,
they
yeah.
don't want screen glare, and they're doing a lot of intense art, and so I have a sad light, and so it's like, you know, it's just like fakes vitamin D type
Oh, cool.
stuff. So
You feel better with it?
yeah, I like it. It
They should
keeps me
call it
awake
a happy
too.
light.
I know. I don't know
Sure.
why they call it a sad light.
Mine's
but-
actually
This is
called
the name of
Happy
the-
Light on the light.
I know.
So, oh, there's Mike Aransky's baby.
Way too late. Now, it's only impressive now if a sad light comes in. That's Mike Aransky's happy
It
light.
was
Yeah, that's maybe what I need in my life. I don't need a,
A
real
baby
happy
or
light.
Mike Aransky's baby?
A baby.
Okay.
Or Mike Aransky.
If
Either one. You
If
can get
things are
pretty
not
cheap.
going well for you, have a baby, and that will solve it
all your problems.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course. At least 3 children.
sure.
Yeah.
True.
Okay.
Anyway, Josh says, "What do you guys think about the few amount of boss fights in games these days?"
Thank God. That's
I
what
love
say.
it.
What
Yes.
you love the few amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He says a lot of this seems to stem from new technologies in video games, increasing the ability to deliver a stronger narrative, thus making the inclusion of a boss fight unnecessary or out of place. Are boss fights really dying, or is it because we have such a diverse library of games available?
Boss fights can be fun.
Sure.
But I think they work more in like a game that's like old Contras and stuff like that, right? Where that's what the game was. The game was a bullet hell game, and then it came to a boss, and it was about being challenged by that boss.
Right.
Whereas like by the time you beat something like maybe Arkham Asylum, like remember when you played that and you got to the
Yeah.
final boss fight, and you're just
it's
like,
the worst.
"Ah."
What the fuck is this?
Yeah, you're just like
Yeah.
it wasn't satisfying in that same way because the game wasn't following that dynamic of grind your way through a level, fight a crazy hard boss, grind your way through a
Yeah.
level, fight a crazy hard boss, and so
Yeah,
it just
yeah.
felt like it feels like a vestige left over from like, you know, that you're like, I guess we have to have. It's like it's an easy way to do a climax. Like
Sure.
the climax, we have to give you a really hard spike at the end.
Yep,
It's
yep,
like,
yep.
I don't know. That's not necessarily satisfying to me. Like, I thought it was much better when I played. I think it was Gears 3, where it's like you're in like a helicopter. And it's like, two, and like that wasn't like a real boss fight. It wasn't hard. It was very.
It was
easy.
the opposite of a boss
fight.
And
it was like you just basically were along for the ride. Whereas in Gears 1, there was like a very typical boss fight, and I just thought that was more annoying than anything else.
We always talk about it, right? I don't understand why developers feel the need to leave. Here's the last thing you'll ever have from our game, and it's this totally frustrating, hard bosses of us trying to make you feel like you've overcome something great when really I just want to ride off into the sunset.
Sure,
right?
And there are games where that works, right?
Yeah.
Like whether it's Contra, but also Dark Souls. Dark Souls is a game that is what people want. You want to grind through those things and then get to that freaking boss that's going to surprise you.
But like you're talking about with like Batman games, right? Like I always loved the penguin fight where you just walk up and punch the penguin in the face and it's over.
Or Killer Croc, where it's about hiding from him and stuff.
Right.
That's a smart way to do it that feels very grounded in the universe you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Well, they often have to, in order to make them challenging and, memorable, they have to change the mechanics, so they have to put some sort of wrinkle on it.
He beat alcoholism.
He beat alcoholism in the Dark Souls.
The best boss fight I can think of in recent memory is Portal 2, the end of Portal 2.
Sure.
And that was an awesome one.
And again, because it's like so much story-driven stuff to it as well, and it's charming. It retains, like, it doesn't like do a 180 on you like other games. You're like, where did this come from? It feels very out of place. But Portal, it was like still super Portal. Like it still had the puzzle elements that you expected. You weren't all of a sudden doing like first-person shooting.
Right, that's what I was trying to say. Is so many change the mechanics at the very last moment because I don't know, because they feel like they have to, and then it's this weird out of place thing. Like
or they throw in a quick time event at the end, like Tomb Raider.
That's true.
Doesn't really work for me.
Yeah,
but the games, in the old days, used to be they were structured totally different. They were divided into levels, right?
Yeah.
And like, is the level just going to end?
Right.
Like, it should have a climax, right?
Yeah.
And then
that makes sense.
Makes sense. Now they're not divided into levels. It's a big open world, like Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. It's just like.
Yeah. The only indication you got that you finished something is like a screen comes up and it's like, good job, you finished the mission.
Why are they called bosses? Do all the other minions like report to them?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
The Koopa Troopers report to King Koopa. Bowser.
Yeah.
Colloquial.
I just want to what's the hierarchy? Is the level 2 boss in charge of the level 1 boss?
Oh, no. I think they're independent contractors.
Yeah, they all...
You have your one boss,
they're like
you have
governors.
your boss, and then, you have the lines coming out to them that are all in charge of their own world or their own level.
Yeah. So, but all the bosses report to the end boss.
Yeah.
But they don't report to each other. Level 1's boss doesn't report to level 2.
Governors,
level 1 reports to the big boss, level 2 reports to the big
Senators report to the president type thing, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think that's... Do they report to the president?
I mean...
No. Maybe the president of the Senate.
There's no president.
Isn't that the vice president?
Yeah.
And isn't his title President of the Senate?
I saw House of Cards.
Me too.
Wow.
I wonder if they have
American education.
Yep.
Right, do they have performance reviews?
Like you led a few...
It's called voting.
I'm talking about video game bosses.
Okay.
But what about, the Koopa kids, is that their dad? Like, it's just a family? So basically you're just fucking up this family?
Yeah.
There have
pretty been Mario games where you killed Bowser's children.
Princesses.
I don't even remember. So were the kids involved in the kidnapping? They're supporting.
They were.
Or they're just like, are you just getting? You're just coming out.
They're all. I mean, they're
my princess.
They're kids from a single family. They want a mom. They want to see Bowser have a mom that they can help govern the children.
So who's mom? Who's mom Bowser? Where
died in a tragic accident. That was all caused by Mario and Luigi.
Giving birth.
No, but
they screwed up a plumbing pipe. It leaked out in the street. She slipped on her back and got hit. And I mean, just fucking plowed through by a drunk Koopa Troopa.
Like it's one of the Toadstool Kingdom people.
Yeah, a Toad.
Now I want to know if there is like a canonical Mario mom to all these kids.
Burno.
I was thinking about the fact that you wear that Tanuki suit and stuff, and raccoons kill and eat turtles all the time. So I was just picturing Koopa Troopers running in terror when they see you, because you're basically coming at them looking like a werewolf that's there to murder them.
Yeah. Mario.
Tearing off their shells, pulling the guts out.
And then throwing the shell at the next guy and like, you're next.
It's like ripping off someone's
I was going to say, it's you kill someone and then throw their skull to kill someone else. Games are fucked up. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Anyway, it doesn't sound like we missed boss fights that much.
No.
Because
they have a place.
Yeah, they're still there in a lot of
It can be
games.
done well, but...
Yeah.
I think that's all the scoops we have for everybody this week. Thanks for joining us. Anthony, I'm really glad you could be here.
Oh, my God. It was the best. Highlighted GDC.
Do you want to take this moment to announce you're moving back to San Francisco?
I wish I was. But for now, I got to stay where the sad lights live.
Yeah.
So
Always right here.
you guys are always with me too.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Greg. My name is Damon. This is IGN Game Scoop, and we're out.